All right, welcome to this month's movie club. I think it's the third iteration. Today we're going to talk about Starship Troopers.
Good start. Good start.
Might have had a couple too many already. But yeah, the movie is from, and we're staying here. If you watched last month's movie club, almost in the same time period here, 1997, the movie. However, it's based on a book as well. The book of the same name from 1959. And let me just admit Steve.
Oh, good. Man, I was just going to go off on Steve for the next 20 minutes, but that saves us some time.
Hey, Steve. All good here. Yeah, we were just getting started. So I was just giving a short intro, mentioning the movies from 1997, directed by Paul Verhoeven, based on a book from 1959. I think then the dates here are very relevant. But before we jump into the movie, I'll let you just do a quick intro. James, if you're, I think you're the next one in the pen.
My name is James, and that I don't know. That's it. I'm never good at that.
Okay, Mister, I want to be on stream. No one asked me to stream. That's your best intro? Come on, man.
Yep.
I guess I'll go next. I'm Josh Greathouse, the creator of Bang Ballad of the Tiger. Also, this is going to be fun because I didn't have time to watch this, but I do know this movie really well. To the point of I'm pretty sure I can keep up.
So you watched it just not within the last week?
No, I've seen this thing because this used to be late night cable. I've seen this thing over 10 times. So
that's because it's brilliant.
Yeah, there you go. Steve, you just joined. Just brief intro. Who are you? Where can we find you? If we can find you somewhere.
So I'm Steve on the Discord. I'm #1 Maniac. That's also my Instagram and Twitter handle. I'm DBZ All Star on YouTube.
There you go. You do have a YouTube channel, and I'll put a link in the description to your channel, DBZ All Stars. Great unboxing videos and other content there. Awesome. But yeah, I'm Thorsten. I've watched this movie when it came out. I think just a couple of years after it came out. And then just a couple of days ago again for this movie club. So we're about over 20 years in between where I didn't watch this movie. And when I rewatched it, I probably didn't remember 70-80% of it. All I remembered were the fight scenes with the bugs. Which are great effects for that.
I mean, this is probably a good way to start off this club, but it's I think the thing is you see a trailer, you see the movie, and you're like, man, I want to go in for some dumb fun, guys killing bugs. This is going to be excellent, hoorah. Then the more you watch it, you're like, wait a minute, there's actually a message to this. I didn't agree to this.
Yeah, I don't think I got that message when I first watched it. Again, when it came out, I was like,
I did. I was too young.
Some friends of mine had the movie and it was R-rated, and I wasn't 18. So I was like, ooh, we got our hands on an R-rated movie. Let's watch this. And yeah, it was some good splatter action, but I didn't get more out of this movie back then. That's why I probably never rewatched it in between. Rewatching it now, yeah, as you said, it's like, oh no, there's a message. But it's interesting to kind of decipher what the message is, because I think there are various opinions. When I did a search online, it's like, okay, what's the largest opinion? What do critics say? Just to get the feel, because I have my own opinion, but I was like, this can't be true. And then I think the opinion is divided on that as well, but can get into that. in a little bit. But Josh, what you said, you watched it 10 times, so you gotta love something else other than.
It's one of these. Like I said, it was one of these late night, which older. I don't know. I feel like a lot of people probably relate to this more than anything, because this used to be like on TNT. Like this used to be one of those late night, always on cable kind of movies. And it's a kind of movie like, yeah, it's fun to watch from the beginning. But even if you're like, oh, I'm at the part where it's like she's learning how to fly for the first time. These town got killed. Oh, they're learning that they're actually grunts, and there's a hierarchy to this. The capturing of the bug. Doogie Howser's a Nazi. All the fun parts.
Yeah, I feel it builds itself through side comments, just small hints that it gives you that they don't fully outline in the beginning, but like stuff with over there in Buenos Aires, but then they're all white. So it gives you like, okay, the world is kind of, I don't know if that's whitewashed for the movie, because I saw somewhere, I didn't read the book. I don't know if any of you read the book.
No. But the director said he didn't read the book either. He hated it.
That's what he said, but yeah. In the book, Rico, I think, was Filipino, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right. I don't know how much of that's like whitewashing and how much of it was just budget, because like another channel I love, I'm not part of the Patreon, but the Beard Bros recently watched this movie and they commented how they're like, I forget what town it's like, they're like, that's blah blah California. Like that's 100% California in the shots, because it's cheaper than actually going to Georgia. Yes.
Steve, did you read the novel?
A long while ago. I don't have a lot of memory for it. My first experience with this movie was seeing it in, I think it was 2001. It was on Encore Action right after Anna Midnight segment. I remember finishing up Hellsing, the original series, and that came on, and I actually was not allowed to watch rated R movies on my own. So I turned 18, which was a little bit later than that, but I stayed up and watched it and just fell in love with it because it's a great action movie, but there's a lot of cool messages going on there, whether you're talking about the political messages or the relationship-driven messages in there. Read the novel a little bit later, don't remember it too well, but I also researched a little bit behind the scenes to understand what went into the production. And yeah, this movie went through a couple different drafts. Its budget was not what it was originally intended to be. And they tried to basically blacklist the director for a little while. They accused him of promoting being a Nazi. And that's not what this movie is. He's not promoting being a Nazi, but we can get into that as we discuss it.
Which is also like, if you compare, again, I haven't read the book, but apparently the book was a little bit more pro fascism, if you will, or authoritarian systems, which surprised me, because I'm only watching the movie and then knowing that the novel is from 59, I thought the novel would also go into the direction of being in like critical commentary on the Vietnam War, or at least the Cold War. Keeping a theme here with the movie club of discussing Fear and Loathing, like
I was going to say, kind of that
social commentary of the same era, and the movie also coming out at the same time almost. But apparently the novel was not as much satire as the movie was, and was actually promoting those story points, those things, criticizing the youth of the 1950s, that they've become too lazy and they should better fall in line, and then using that background to kind of do like space war, make a commentary on the society during the Cold War, which at that point hadn't even heated up that much. Like in the late 50s, I was just getting started, right?
I was gonna say, because one weird thing, well, not a weird thing, but like one way for fascism to have to work is you need a strong enemy, but you also need it to be a weak enemy. It's like it's strong when if you're not together, but it's weak once you come together. And especially the other thing is you need to dehumanize your enemy. So the bugs really fit both of those categories like really well without you realizing that's the message they're kind of giving.
And I feel they're taking a lot of comments of that time, like they're not really smart. You can't expect them to think. It's like what you would see from like Western commentary about communism of that time, the Cold War. Like they don't think for themselves because the government tells them what to think with their propaganda and them just following the leader. How was it called? The brain bug, or the equivalent to that. But then it's interesting. I mean, again, they make it obvious that it's not necessarily about the bugs, because to me it was like, how do the bugs haul asteroids at Earth? Even the intelligent ones, they don't have any technology, at least like it wasn't shown that they have technology to haul asteroids at any other planet on purpose. So you can tell it's not meant to be. They choose bugs for that, but it doesn't need to make sense within that universe, because it wasn't about the bugs. It stands for the Soviets.
Well, I was about to say it's also because like Warhammer 40K, StarCraft, like even like Alien to a certain extent, like giant buggish kind of alien creatures is a common motif. And back in, especially like you look at the 50s, like B films, like the giant ants, stuff like that. So it's like it's this weird, because it's a commentary about like pro-war and fascism, but it's also like a commentary on like older B-style movies as well.
Could this movie also be like a remake of All Quiet on the Western Front?
I've heard that.
It reminded me a lot of like Alien, and a little bit of Star Wars. There's a lot of, again, this is based on a book, so you can't say it stole from those movies. Those movies came before, but then the novel Starship Troopers came before that. But I guess also the movie wasn't meant to be based on Starship Troopers. It was after the script was written. And then there were so many similarities to the novel that they said you can't, it's just a ripoff. So you have to call it like Starship Troopers and not whatever that other name was, like Bug Problem on Station 9 or what. I don't know. I don't have the full title, but it came together after. But as I was going through, rewatching the movie, I was like, well, it has elements of Full Metal Jacket. I had to look up, when did Full Metal Jacket come out? It's like 87. Star Wars from 77, Alien and Aliens from 79 and 86. They were all before that. So it's like Starship Troopers took a lot from those movies, I felt, while watching it. But then again, the novel came out before those movies came out. So it's kind of a back and forth maybe. And again, not knowing the novel, I don't know how much the movie took from it, or the visual inspiration came from the movies while the story came from the book.
And also because like Star Wars, the only reason we got Star Wars is because they didn't want to license Buck Rogers to George Lucas.
Is it John Carter too?
I think so. I know it was Buck Rogers for sure on that one, because it always reminds me of Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century. But so it's like a lot of the stuff, yeah, because it's like, I mean, yeah, like James said, the granddaddy of them all is John Carter of Mars.
Good, Steve.
You can basically ignore the novel except for the designs. Yes, some of the story is similar, but as we've been discussing, the novel promotes fascism to the point that I think it came out in 1974, the 1974 novel, The Forever War, utilized a similar plot, but it was very anti-fascism. And it went to the extent that they went into full descriptions of the battle armor used in that book. That was very similar to what was described in the Starship Troopers novel. And the reason why you see the kind of mech suit that you see in the Alien film is because it took some inspiration from this. So at the very least, you can say that the novel inspired other science fiction films, but the message, fortunately, did not inspire any sort of sequel-ish books in that style.
Yeah, it's funny then that Verhoeven took like Heinlein's book and switched the message around, like or tried to 180. I think there were like voices about the movie when it initially came out that it still said like, no, this movie is still like on the same path. It's still supporting or promoting fascism, when he tried not to. And I guess it's a thin line with the movie, because I can see the parts that are satire, but there are also many parts that aren't satire, that are still glorifying that political system.
I was about to say, because in the Discord, I posted the early 12 warning signs of fascism, because it's like powerful and continuing nationalism. That's rampant throughout this movie. Disdain for human rights, especially when like the commander throws a knife at the grunt. Identify the enemy as a unifying cause, the bugs. Rampant sexism, surprisingly not in this. Control of mass media, obsession with national security, the bugs. Religion and government intertwined, because they only mentioned one religious scene, and it was the Mormon outpost that got destroyed by the bugs. Corrupt power protected, kind of got that. Labor power suppressed, kind of got that. Disdain for intelligence and the arts, definitely were not a fan of the arts in this movie. Obsession with crime and punishment. You run, you get shot. Cowards, like no cowards. Everyone fights. And then rampant cronyism and corruption. Haha, word I'm not used to reading. So it doesn't hit on all the points, but it's one of these. Yeah, you know what? And a brilliant point about this movie is the film bits I always found, because they give you a lot of context very quickly, but they also like, it's weird when you first watch it, you're like, oh, this is just like an expedition dump, but then you realize later it's like, no, this actually is like the underlining theme like throughout the whole movie without you realizing, especially like the cheesy, like the kids like stomping on the roaches, stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's just some of these.
The scene with the kids playing with the guns didn't really age well. I think there was an era prior to school shootings, but no, they give you the hints and bits, because they also, it's showing you just the society, like the disregard of the bug life. Like they are not worth, like, oh, when you shoot them, don't aim at the legs, aim at the nervous system, or and then demonstrating it and basically disregarding, or not seeing them as human or as living beings, but as just a pest, which in fascism, that's what you had with the Nazis. Didn't call Jews human. They were like, they're not human, so we can do those things. And then not to that extreme, but during the Cold War, like Americans seeing the communist Soviet Union, like, well, they don't think for themselves. They're like hardly worth regarding. And I think there were a few comments there, like, the average bug isn't that smart, and we thought we were smarter than the bugs, and kind of those hints through those little clips, and also the theme of like RoboCop, I guess, the director picking off of that.
Also, though, I will say, I always thought it was a brilliant story point, because they're like, the bugs are dumb, and then the bugs set up a trap.
Yeah, and then gaining their knowledge from sucking their brains out. And also, again, hurling, they should, from the start, if you're hurling asteroids at a different planet, you can't be that dumb. But I guess the foot soldiers, it's not about the heads of that army, but I guess about the little bugs actually being used in that war.
Well, and also because it's this I always thought was a fun thing story-wise, because it starts off with the attack that goes wrong. And then it's like, let's go back 4 months earlier or whatever, because you're like,
1 year.
okay, or 1 year. Yeah, you're like, oh, okay.
They needed to show something to keep you hooked, like so you don't start the movie and go through like Star Wars Episode 1. You just go through the political stuff first. They hook you with some action sequences, and then it's like, let's take a step back and go to the academy and see how they were actually recruited. Also, in our first movie club, talking briefly about Nothing New in the Western Front, or Quiet on the Western Front, the English translation, when a novel that was highly explained of how the teenagers were recruited to the military through the school system, through the teachers that were praising the war efforts. And you have that here as well, the teacher praising the war effort and kind of being used as a tool to recruit the students. And you have like Rico's dad even commenting on that. I think he says like there should be a law against using a school as recruitment station. And then the way he died later, again, this is like, that's why I said this movie is a thin line between satire and, yeah, I can see why critics can pick out some points and say this is pro-fascism, because he was like depicted as the idiot. But he was the only voice of reason there for Rico, of like not joining, but then all his further actions and his demeanor and everything was just like, oh, he's the idiot. And then he died because he couldn't defend himself because, yeah, he was against the military.
I was about to say, because like Rico almost gets punished because he didn't want to join the military, where like everyone else wanted to. And it's like, yeah, because they say like, because they're like, oh, we all lost our families, but it seemed like, I don't know, it seemed like Rico like really lost everyone else, where it's like they never touched on the other characters losing their families, like Rico's.
They might be programmed not to think about
That's a loss. Sorry, James, go ahead.
I say they might be programmed not to think about what they lost. They could go with it.
Well, I don't think it was much of a loss because his parents wanted him within their control, and yet they wanted him to find his own path. They were complaining about the fact that he was joining the military to chase a girl, and yet they were doing the exact same thing. They were trying to control him. So in the end, he made his choice, and I think it's the right one. Let's take Carmen out of the equation because I have feelings about her.
I was about to say, because I feel like we've been like, granted, you know, it's a movie club, let's all be sophisticated, because we're like, oh yes, the pro-fascism. But then it's like, there's a shit ton of teen drama, which it's like, did not expect that with the Giant Bug movie and pro-fascist statements.
Well, that was completely intentional, Josh. When this was originally, what was it called? It was Bug Hunt at Outpost 7 or 13. The director wanted to lean fully into the B-movie style, just with a blockbuster budget, because this was being released around the time that Hollywood was hungry for more big sci-fi after the success of Deep Impact and Armageddon and Independence Day, of course. So they wanted something good, but the director didn't want to follow those movies in the same fashion. He wanted to have fun with it. And so he decided, you know, I'm going to give you your war movie. You're going to get your extraterrestrials, but you're also going to get teenage romance. And let me tell you, this movie has the very definition of teenage romance, because Carmen is one of the least sophisticated and least mature partners that you can think of in this movie.
Yeah, they killed the one person.
I mean, you can clearly see that she's leading Rico on, that she only supports him when he's following what she wants. She's leading him on using her sexuality, because after the prom, when he reveals that he's joining up, she's like, oh, my dad's not home. Let me give you something that I haven't given you before, just to keep you on the hook. But then she sees that Xander is in the same career path she is. So within a few months, she decides, you know what? Rico's around, but he's like a couple hundred light years away. I'm just going to hook up with this schmo. And we see how that works out for her at the end of the movie when she decides, you know, maybe I was better off. But I'm hoping, because they never really follow up in any of the 4 sequels, and they don't follow up in the anime series either with their potential renewed romance. But I'm hoping he was smarter and didn't end up back with her, because he deserved better than that.
Wait a minute. We cannot continue this conversation. Stephen, I feel like you need an adult, because if you've watched all the sequels and the animated series, you are not capable of making rational choices in your life.
I have the anime series.
James, oh my gosh. Intervention. That's the next movie. Intervention for you two.
Josh, I have watched the sequels because for a long time, if I started something, I had to finish it. And I have seen some absolutely abysmal movies. I've seen all the Sharknado movies. I've seen Zombievers. I've seen Zombie Strippers. I will watch a movie to give it a fair chance. That's why I've told people I can judge that 2016 Ghostbusters movie, but if you haven't seen it, you only know what people are saying about it. You can't make a proper judgment call on it.
How dare you? How dare you, sir? Zombievers is a classic. Yes, I've seen it.
That it is.
Also, I feel like you're indirectly calling out Josh, because usually he shows up not watching or reading a book to a book club or a movie club. But hey, we're like 2 out of 3 now on movie clubs where Josh has actually watched the movie. So you're on a good path there. But going back to Carmen, I think in the initial script, she was supposed to actually have like the 2 relationships at the same time, right? I think it went a little bit too far with the director, and he said, yeah, we can't portray her like that. She should break up with Rico first before she engages with Xander, and like kind of cleaned it out there a little bit more. But yeah, she was not meant to be a likable character.
No, and they do a very great job of portraying that, because she's disloyal from the moment Xander shows up on screen. That has emotional affair written all over it.
And it's also, I almost got the feeling too, even before that, because one, I won't lie, when I saw the movie, I had a crush on her because I thought she was hot. But I also felt like the second he was going to become a grunt, that's when like the separation started.
Maybe, but there's a huge difference between Denise Richards' character in Wild Things and Denise Richards' character in this.
I was about to say, to me, watching this, I couldn't first tell if this was just perfectly executed or just poor acting.
Yes.
Because it was like, yeah, something is wrong with her. Like the whole time I was like, she's not likable. Like even before she pulled all that stuff off, I was like, she's just like not in her role. But now, like if you think about all those things and know about the character's intentions, and her being very opportunistic, then no, that was perfectly played, even though it might not seem like it was. And then there's many like other characters and other aspects of the movie too, where you think like, oh, it's just poorly made, poorly executed. It's like slapstick. But if it's supposed to be satire, and if those characters are supposed to have those like opportunistic tendencies, no, in that case, it's not poor acting. It's meant to be like that.
Because, sorry for interrupting. The blonde hair friend, the other male, because he was almost like he was straight out of a comedy at times.
You mean Ace?
Yeah.
Oh, he kind of reminded me of Duke in a way.
Also, that guy called from Street Fighter?
Guile.
Yeah.
Look, I would give you Paul from Tekken, but he is no Guile. Clancy Brown is Guile. My internet's terrible, isn't it? My internet is terrible.
No, you're fine. Better than last time. You're still here, though.
I do think that the portrayal that Denise Richards gave us does fit for the movie, because if we're supposed to take this as a parody, and if we're supposed to present a stereotype within the propaganda, because she does show up in it at the very end of the movie as someone to be supported, but not really, because she's a terrible person, then it fits within the context of the film.
The film itself became a propaganda piece of that imaginary time. Like, you could have shown this movie to the people in the movie as a recruitment effort and be like, well, they're still heroes in the end, and like, look at what they've gone through, and they still like stuck together as a team, and they all made a career, and they're all heroes in the end. They defeated the enemy, and it's all good. Nothing bad happened here.
You know what I wish I would have thought. Wow, no, because Torsten, you're right. I want to. Okay, I have a memory, but not a strong enough memory. I want to say it was like a Disney cartoon. There was someone who made it was supposed to be propaganda, like it was showing how terrible Nazis are, and it was a whole propaganda film, because it was like Hitler's youth, like learning how weak the rabbit is. I don't know, I might have to do a little bit of internet digging, but it's the kind of thing, it's like this movie kind of apes that, and this was something that came out like during World War II, like in the 40s, like basically to show like how evil, Hitler is by corrupting the youth. Are you
talking about the one with Donald Duck that was originally titled A Nightmare in Nazi Land that they had to
not that one. This one actually had humans, because it was I just remember it clearly. It was Hitler's youth, because they were learning about the rabbit and the wolf, and they're all like, the rabbit's weak, because all of a sudden it was basically them taking like all the humanity out of kids. Because Torsten, you're right, because at the beginning of this, it's like you're seeing like the immoral kids, but it's like they found purpose and they became who they're supposed to be at the end.
They became citizens, right? The citizenship that they all desired.
It was like Michael Ironside's character. I mean, he was brilliant, because like Rico became him at the end of that movie.
Is it Education for Death you're talking about, Josh?
Maybe.
Because Disney, they don't talk about it when it concerns their history at this point, but they do history of propaganda films, especially for that era.
Yep, Steven, you're 100% on the nose. Oh my gosh, put that in the group. Yes. Oh my gosh, because because the problem with satire is like you have to make it clear like you're doing satire from the beginning. And like we were saying with this movie, it kind of like the line gets blurry at some points. Also, boot camp. That was fun times.
Medic!
Why do we need to learn how to throw a knife when we can just push a button?
I found it funny, the mini nukes, and like just nuke them, and like they have a little atomic bomb on a grenade launcher.
Especially it's like radiation, none of that worry. Okay.
No, he's covered also in the bug blood and wait, I don't have as many virtual backgrounds, but I got that one. But I need to get out of the way to actually show the bug.
I was gonna say, because the other thing is there's the whole bit of like Dumb believing in Rico, and then he gets the one guy killed with the helmet because they're using live ammunition.
Yeah, but he got punished for it. But the way he shot the guy didn't. He gets to walk away.
Yes, but I love how they reversed history during that punishment scene and had the African American doing the whipping, because it reflected and reversed what would happen in the Civil War if there were a mistake, that the African Americans would be selected for punishment if a platoon failed, or even if a white servicemen were found guilty of insubordination. They would just pull someone out, gather everyone around, and do the whipping as disciplinary action. And in this, they completely reverse that. I absolutely love that part. The fact that we're able to poke fun and reflect history at the same time.
I mean, it's like picking all the different fascist themes throughout history and putting them in there. It's like, I know we had a conversation on Discord with someone who isn't here, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. But yeah, there's been points in history. It's not a recent development. Like there have been many, many times where you had those fascist tendencies, not only in the US, obviously in other countries as well. But this movie being very centered around the US, picking the theme of the Cold War and taking sides with the West within the Cold War. Again, to me, it was also Vietnam War at the beginning of it, perhaps, but I couldn't find any references with regards to that. But yeah, picking those times, as you mentioned. I mean, I had some gladiator style there too, like some references, but.
I would say too, because just like with the whipping, I mean, that is not a new thing either, because it's like Romans did that. And it's also because like I know like pirates or like Navy ships, that was common for the lash. And it's like it's easy to forget how brutal that is, especially like I feel like in some Hollywood movies, like they'll do like a line, like a slight scar, but this one it literally showed like flesh getting cut like deep, and it's like, oh yeah, like 10 is not a big number, but when each one of these is going to cause you enormous pain, like yeah, 3 of these is going to like knock you off your feet.
Oh yeah, no, I think there's been reference. I don't know. I used to know more about this, like with the age of like gladiator movies when he had Ben-Hur and Gladiator and other movies when they referenced that a little bit more. Like 10 is already an amount where you can pass out. Like if you get sentenced to 20, that was almost death. Like there's a certain level of how many you can take of those, and you're probably passing out at some point. And yeah, 10 as a number, 10 not high, but for those kind of whips, that's like brutal. Because after 3 in that scene, after 3 he was done.
Yeah, movie can be subtle when it wants to be, but when it wants to get its point across, it's very in your face. And I appreciate that, even though one of the problems that critics had beyond the fact that they thought it was promoting fascism was the fact that they thought, and it did very much so, it poked fun at the fact that the United States military could be that brutal. And it also poked at the fact that we've had to go through several different movements to allow people to have rights. You see people like Rico's parents have their life set because they're wealthy, but then you have women, you have those other groups of people who may have not had rights, fighting for their lives to earn rights through service to become a citizen. And that's very reflective of history.
I was gonna say, because it's interesting too, because like one in the the shower scene, because I'm not classy of a guy, but one of them didn't mention, because like a lot of them were asking, why do you want to be a citizen? And one's like, oh, I want to be a mother, like I want to do career and jobs. Wasn't that the other thing? Like, because Rico was like, because it's like you couldn't vote. I can't remember all the things with the citizen, like, but there was quite a bit. Like, but it was interesting too that it's like in our world, like in America, it's like, you know, you pay your taxes, you become a citizen. Whereas there, it's like you had to do X amount of military training or military service.
It's like pokes fun at the fact that everyone thinks American citizenship is the thing to be desired, and everyone strives to be a citizen. But then, yeah, it also, and that's where this movie goes really deep, as you mentioned, those scenes of what they couldn't do without citizenship. Like, yeah, the right, yeah, I want to be a mother. It's like, so non-citizens are not allowed to have kids. Because she said, she doesn't, I don't think she says exactly want to be a mother. She's like, I want to gain the
I want to
right.
have a baby.
Yeah, I want to gain the right to have, yeah, like be permitted to have a baby. Like, and yeah, the other things too, where it's like, oh, this is very restrictive. If those are the reasons you want to become a citizen, which indicates, or the implication is that if you're not a citizen, you're not allowed to do those things. You're not allowed to buy a house or have kids or any of the things which are fundamental rights. Most of the things that they said are like, well, those are like given. You should not be denied any of those. But the fact that they said we need citizenship for it, kind of like, that's where it goes deep. And it's like, oh, that's a big critique. That's not promoting fascism, even though it sounds like it, because they are like glorifying the citizenship status. But if you think about it, it's the opposite. And there goes Josh's internet.
He'll be back 5 minutes.
Yeah, but again, this is like stuff where people that say this is supporting fascism, you could go with like, oh, it's just poorly executed, purely made. But yeah, no, you have to at this point think that everything has an intention, everything is intentional. And if it is, and if you go with that, then it's definitely satire with a deeper meaning.
Well, even within that shower scene, you've got the woman who eventually decides to resign her post in the wake of that tragedy during the exercise, talking about how she can't be involved in politics or even hold office until she completes a term of service. And then that kind of pays off later, because when you see the Sky Marshal that's presented earlier in the film is in part responsible for these hundreds of thousands of deaths of these soldiers, he's replaced by the next generation. And it is not another older white male, it's a somewhat younger African-American woman. And I see that as a turning point in the film, because when she becomes that new Sky Marshal, their strategies become more intelligent and they start fighting back and actually winning against their enemy. So it just shows that you can't continue to just throw darts at the wall and hit the same target expecting to win. You have to bring in new points of view and new strategies in order to push forward and hopefully overcome your enemy through that.
One point I'm going to make before my internet dies. I'm going to be the outlier here. I'm going to sound old as hell, but I don't give a shit. I miss having 20 and 30-year-olds pretending to be teenagers, because then we could have tits in movies.
Well, depending upon how
it's R-rated, it's still fine to do that, but yeah, not with actual teenagers, obviously.
Depending upon how you watch this, Josh, you didn't get to see that. I've probably seen this upwards of 20 times because I just view it as a wonderful film. I wish the Criterion Collection would remaster this and put some special features together for it, and I'd buy it day one. But
they probably will.
On TNT, as I mentioned, I saw it on Encore Action back in 2001, but I've been to the Riff Tracks Live as well, and they covered up the gratuitous nudity, as they called it, with a little skit and had a curtain pulled over that scene until their little skit, which for some reason involved someone dressed up in a bear suit giving a massage to... But they covered that up, and the same thing with the love scene later on. They pulled a curtain over the film in the theater and did some other ridiculous thing.
That's funny, but I'm 99% sure that the version I watched like over 20 years ago was censored to some extent, because I cannot remember it being so graphic, seeing people being ripped in pieces, the nudity. Like I'm certain that there was some censored version where they cut some scenes out, and they used to do that a lot, especially on like German television when they Yeah, I remember we rented like a VHS and watched the movie. It wasn't on television, but I know on television they would censor all of that, obviously.
Well, because I remember this quite well was the because I grew up Mormon, so the LDS scene, like that was a brutal scene, which it's like on cable, I think they like kept a still of like just the overall, where the uncut they show like bodies because that was kind of the whole like going out into into the bug territory, not listening and getting slaughtered.
And those are realistic looking corpses. Like I watched it on net. It's on Netflix and R-rated. Again, like they show everything. I don't know if that's a censored version. I want to know what they left out, but no, that seems to be the complete version where you have like, yeah, realistic looking corpses, even with the faces, eyes open and stuff, like very, very detailed effects and puppets or whatever they put on the floor. Because other than the bugs, I think the rest is not CGI. The splatter scenes don't look like CGI. It looks like they built a mannequin and just put some liquid in it and then ripped it apart. Actually, like frame by like paused it and went frame by frame one of the scenes where one of the soldiers like got shot in the head, because like that looked so realistic. Like I want to see, and then yeah, frame by frame you can see the eye is hanging a little bit, so it's like a mannequin they used. But that's not CGI. They only use the CGI, I guess, for on the bug for the bugs.
And the bugs look real too. It's all dated.
They look very realistic, especially for that time. Again, CGI in the late 90s.
I was gonna say, I know it's easy to say for the time, but it's like, man, those bugs look better than some CGI nowadays.
Exactly.
Also, hi internet. So what's fun is, this is a weird thing to admit to the internet. So as an artist, I've had to look up a lot of reference. I wish I didn't have to look up, aka like gun wounds and knife wounds. And it's weird because it's like the destruction of a human body doesn't make sense to one's mind, because you're like, no, those are all supposed to be inside, yada yada. So some of the stuff, it's like when it's a practical effect, especially like in the 90s, I mean, they've been doing it for decades. So it's the kind of thing, it's like, I don't know who did the special effects on this, but they probably have like a whole, it's like, oh yeah, we need X amount of bodies, here's the one that gets shot. So they already know how to do like these effects really well, and probably on the cheap.
Yeah, I mean, what other movies did Verhoeven? He did RoboCop, and then there was just like Total Recall.
Oh man,
did he do that one too?
I know,
but I'm not 100% sure. I should look that up. But I believe like he did some movies where he could probably pull some props from, or for some special effects. So they got that done by the time this one came out. Let me just check Total Recall real quick.
Yeah, he did Total Recall. He also did, for better or for worse, he did Hollow Man 3 years after this. I think that was 2000. He also did Basic Instinct, which is his best known non-sci-fi film.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, because it's, and like, because I poked fun earlier, but it is a shame that like none of the sequels, like, because this is a fun like universe, and it would be fun to like go back and get a decent. I would almost wouldn't mind like, like Halloween. Some of these movies are like, okay, we'll make a sequel, but we're ignoring all these versions, just going back to this. I kind of wouldn't mind that for this.
I've never watched any of the sequels. I heard the third one is quite decent. I don't know, Steve, what's your favorite and what's your take on the sequels?
I think the second one tries too hard to be like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And part of that is because it was direct to DVD. It had a very low budget. There are no returning characters. However, what's the third one called? Marauder actually got a little bit of money. It was straight to DVD as well. They bring back Casper. He plays an older Rico, and It's actually quite good. I wouldn't rank it up there with the quality of the first one or with Roughnecks, the anime, but I think that's my favorite of the sequels because the fourth and fifth were CGI animated films. The fourth one brings back Rico, Ibanez, and
Dizzy
Jenkins.
Dizzy comes back, right?
What's that?
Dizzy comes back, right? She
was pretty
favorite.
dead.
Dizzy comes back in the last one, which is Traitor either Saturn or Mars. She
Is that a prequel or
reprises her role, and Casper comes back for the final time for this particular iteration of the franchise. The last thing they talked about doing, that Sony said they would do, is reboot it and revive it. So basically Halloween 2018 it and do a television series on Amazon. But that was back in 2021 that we had our last update for it. I would watch that if they can bring back some of the original people.
The only sucky, like, so here's the thing, like, I would love Clancy Brown back in it, but not playing the same character, like give him a different role. Granted, I would love Clancy Brown in almost anything.
The man's just very versatile, and given the way that technology works in this universe, I mean, you see people heal pretty fatal wounds in their version of the Bacta tank. You wouldn't have to bring him back, but worst case scenario, if you wanted him to play the same character but have a different style, you could just do what they did in the recent Avatar film and bring him back as a clone of some kind, maybe inject some of that bug DNA.
Is that how they brought Dizzy back, or?
No, the Traitor film is set between their boot camp and her untimely and unfortunate demise after Rico proved their love to each other.
Gotcha. I heard in a, I think, I don't know, James, I think you or someone else shared like a clip on Discord where they explained that the movie was shown to a focus group and everyone was against killing Dizzy, but then the director still stuck with it.
Well, it's hard because, like, in some ways, like, they almost make Dizzy too, like, she was too much of a simp to Rico. Because I remember, like, every time I watched that movie, I'm like, honey, you could do better. Like, come on. Like, you could do so much better than fucking Rico. Because it's like, yeah, because Carmen was the worst. But Rico wasn't, like, a catch either. So you're like, ugh.
No, because he settled. He accepted her love in the end, but you could tell that he felt he was settling. But it's not like there was a Josh Greathouse in the movie for her to.
Well, they're also teenagers, right? This is like Love is Blind. Like if you don't change your feelings, like no matter how. I mean, that's like how they explain abusive relationships or something. Like, yeah, you tolerate more than you are willing to admit, or that your mind admits or was willing to. But she was, in love and obsessed with him and could forgive him anything.
But how did she survive the movie?
Oh no, she didn't. Like
she didn't.
Said,
no, Camera, not Dizzy.
Carmen.
Camera, yes.
With the power of plot armor.
Yeah.
She had a hole in her body, so blood would be dropping out.
Through.
You gotta keep in mind that's a shoulder wound. 2, there's a thing in there keeping the pressure on. So yeah, there's a hole, but there's pressure. 3, there's a giant bug that sucks people's brains out. Hole in the arm is not the thing that's going to disbelieve my belief.
Then she was able to use guns and shoot the bugs afterward.
That's the other scene on that station, like where I don't know the name. The guy gets impaled, right, by the bug, and they're like trying to pull it out. It's like, no, leave it in, leave it in. In the end, it didn't matter because I guess he ended up getting killed anyways right after. But I was like, that's the wrong move. You should know better. You're in the military.
Yeah, and they underwent all this training. They had about a year's worth of boot camp at that point, because you see months pass in this movie, and you see that Carmen's gotten certified to fly, and she's able to fly bigger ships. So time passes. You would think they would have taught proper field medicine to these people, but I guess no. Let's rush off to what was it, Planet P, and go kick some ass.
Didn't
Also,
think they could get injured.
the other thing I always found interesting, because with Rico, the one guy gets killed by Rico, he gets corporal punishment. When Carmen, like, they play it off for jokes, but when she scrapes the ship against another ship, I'm like, is that like billions of dollars just gone? Like,
no, and they even say, right, like I forgot this guy, her new lover is the guy.
Xander.
Yes, Xander.
The guy that,
he's
the
like,
guy
this
that
is
became a milkshake.
this is my career on the line. I'm getting fired. And she's like, oh, I got your career in my hands. And then she's like doing that, and then that's fine. And they're like, ha ha ha, it's all good. That can happen. And then you see Rico basically a similar mistake, being punished quite differently.
Well, at that point, she wasn't concentrating. He distracted her. Oh, you've got my career in your hands. And she's like, oh, baby, I want something else in my hands. And it's like, shut up, Carmen.
I also feel like, I'm always curious because I feel like Carmen knew like the right answers in school, but I didn't feel like she was like that. Like, she never came off as like a brilliant pilot or very intelligent. It's just like she knew the right things to say and do to get to a position she needs to.
Well, she was a sociopath, so it fits.
I mean, what's Doogie Howser was a sociopath.
Yeah, he was too. And he makes that perfectly clear by sending his poor ferret up his mother's dress.
Also, because like, because he uses all his friends, because it was one of those like they were trying to draw, they were like willing to sacrifice like countless people to draw up the brain bug.
Yeah, like, we need that one bug, but you don't matter as long as you bring it back. Like, you all can die. Like, we sent you into death, but like, bring that bug back alive, so we can learn from it.
They did everything possible for the film to show that he was very Hitler-esque, and it worked. You hated Carl by the end of that thing.
And I was very surprised by just Neil Patrick Harris's acting. Like, again, like, no more recent stuff, and then this, I haven't watched much of his movies in between. It's like this whole like his development as an actor is just like amazing to see. It's like, yeah, just because you can't act in your early years, like, you still can have a career. Because I mean, maybe also the role, but yeah, his speech pattern and his demeanor was very interesting.
I think he said it took only 2 weeks.
Comparable to later roles.
I think he said it took only 2 weeks to film this movie too. For Neil Patrick.
That's interesting.
I was going to say, because I also feel like, and I could be wrong here, I feel like, because I like Neil Patrick Harris, it always felt to me like he never really wanted to do this role. And I felt like after he did this role, like, he really kind of pick and choose what he did. Because like, he did Broadway for a while. And it's one of those things, I think he kind of picked like projects a lot better after doing this one role.
I mean, it was a box office bomb, so it wasn't good for his reputation.
So when you say he didn't want to do this role, you mean like based on his acting, you could tell he didn't want to do it, or did you see him saying that?
No, just based off his acting, because it's like he definitely is he feels like he's phoning it in, but at the same time, like, his character feels right for his character. Yeah,
again, it goes back to like Denise Richards, right? Like, you think they're not good actors, but they're actually in the, like, his role is meant to be this cocky asshole that like doesn't give a shit and is kind of like full of himself, and so it matches. Like, again, you can't, like, maybe it's, again, back then was already a great actor, that's why he had this career later on, and he played the role how the role was meant to be and not how he was. I mean, he's an actor. That's why I can't recognize it or don't recognize him in later roles or in his demeanor in interviews, or like, because now he's more famous, so you can have more material of him speaking as himself. But I don't see anything of himself in that role, which then again could be, as you said, he phoned it in, or he played it to a T. Like, this is the role, this is the character, and he did it perfectly. Which again goes to the point: is like, was this actually intended or not? But yeah, the more I think and we talk about it, it seems like all on point, and it's a satire that it was meant to be. But it's very difficult to identify that it's a satire. Sometimes, some other things not, but some things were very realistic, and I was like, yeah, this could be seen as portraying fascism.
I feel like the hard thing is because it's like there's some fascism tendency. Like, this movie is not one thing; it's a lot of like different combinations of things. Because like the action sequences, they're fun, especially like the flamethrower bug that comes out of the dirt. Like, that was a fun sequence. There's just some, and it's like, there's a lot, because there's even like, man, there's some commentary on like the working class, because it's like you see how the grunts are treated compared to like the pilots, compared to like other people. It's just a lot of layers to this movie, and it's because it's like Clancy Brown, Michael Ironside does a great job. I don't know, there's so many, you could dissect even like, yeah, they have all this technology, but then it's like they can bring like a soldier back to the dead, but then it's like they give them like the cheapest prosthetics, just enough to like get back into battle.
And they even say that the fleet flies, the infantry dies, or something like that. Steve, any other thoughts? What's your most favorite theme, like, of this? I mean, committing to the whole series and watching all the sequels and the original multiple times, other than wanting to see this through the end, which I totally understand. I lost like 3-4 years of my life to Star Wars just because I wanted to know it all and read all the novels and all of the comics, and like, woo, that's way more time than time consuming that you first think. I was like, oh, it might take half a year, but no. So what's your favorite theme in general?
Well, I would say that this proves that fascism does not work. It just results in more deaths than we can keep track of, and that it also relays that teenage romance is not meant to work.
But didn't they win in the end? So that's why I guess the critics can say like, well, they won that war. Well, I don't know the war, but that battle, they won. They're the heroes. They are citizens now. So playing devil's advocate here, obviously, but does the movie show it doesn't work?
Also,
because it shows that the war machine continues, that they're just stuck in a never-ending series of battles. You may come out on top for a little while, but it just continues. Because, as I said, if you watch Marauder, which is the third film, you see Rico still in action years after this film, mostly because Casper had physically aged at that point, and there was no getting him back to the early 20s look.
Also, I feel like his career didn't really take off as well as it felt like it should have.
No, and it's a shame. You see, what's funny is that Denise Richards, after this, said that she wanted to be taken seriously as an actor. She wouldn't do nudity for this film, and then Wild Things came out a year later with the infamous lesbian kiss scene. So I don't think she stuck to that plan. Neil Patrick Harris is well remembered for this, as well as Doogie Howser. He had a few flops after this. He did The Proposition, which no one remembers. He had a bit role in Undercover Brother, but then you had him in all three of the Harold and Kumar films where he plays an exaggerated version of himself. He was Barry Allen in New Frontier. He was in both Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs films. He was Nightwing and Under the Red Hood. He was in The Muppets. He was in one of the American Pie films, and Gone Girl. People loved his portrayal in Gone Girl.
Also, How I Met Your Mother as Barney.
Well, yeah, that too.
I think that's the most famous he did.
Also, he played in the San Francisco off-Broadway of Sweeney Todd.
That's right, he did. But poor Casper, he basically got nothing after this. And the only reason they brought him back for the third one is because Sony saw this as a multi-film franchise, but the second one performed so horribly. So they figured, well, go back to basics. We'll bring back some of the cast. And the third one performed well enough, despite being direct to video, that they continued to bring him back.
And then I guess now we get streaming movies, but yeah, because that direct to video, like, that was such a death sentence because you knew like the quality of the movie. It's like, okay, I enjoy this franchise, I would like to see more, but fucking direct to DVD, it's like, ooh.
I mean, there used to be quite a few movies that were direct to DVD that weren't that bad at that time because streaming didn't exist. Now it would be direct to streaming, and some direct to streaming movies aren't that bad. But also like Dean Norris, like one of the few folks that I recognized other than the obvious ones. It's like, I know this guy. Where do I know him from? Oh yeah, Breaking Bad. Like, I like him.
Where was he in this?
Dean Norris plays his usual role before it became his usual role. He's the hard ass that you see early on in the film.
At boot camp?
Yeah.
Man, I guess it's been a minute because like
I don't remember what his rank was.
It's like commanding officer.
Oh yeah, you're right.
He was a general, or if they just referred to him as the CO.
No, yeah, because he was the CO. Huh.
Then we got Dizzy, Diane. What was it? Diane
Dina
Meyer. She went on to play Batgirl.
Lots of
TV
DC
series.
in there. Casper doing the Batman movies. Yeah.
Also, because I feel like the guy Jake Busey. Wait a minute. He's not the son of Gary Busey, is he? But man, like early 2000s, he was in everything.
Quite some star power before they were really stars, right? Like when this came out, none of them were known actors, were they? Other than no, not even Denise Richards, right?
I think Neil Patrick might be the most famous person there.
Yeah, for
after, but back then.
No, before it came out.
Yeah, because Doogie Howser. And probably like Michael Ironside. Like some of the people like were very well known for like character actors.
I think Dina Meyer is one of the only reasons people wanted to watch the Birds of Prey WB series because of this.
I watched it. I kind of enjoy some of it.
I enjoy some of it as well, and I can tell you that we're in the minority there, James.
Yeah.
James, you mentioned on Discord like that you thought this took some inspiration from like The Big Picture, which was like a 50s, 60s TV show about the military, and
they did a lot of commercial like we want to know more. And the And the big picture, the U.S. Army, so they went to different towns, talk to people about joining the army and what that town did during that time. So it's pretty much exactly what they did with the TV commercials.
Yeah, I watched the one clip. Sorry, Josh, go ahead.
I was gonna say because those also had like reek of the old like around the world. How are our boys doing on the front? There's Hitler.
The good old war propaganda. What was the first, like the big TV war? That had cameras going in and stuff. Was it? That wasn't Vietnam, was it? Was that?
Yeah, it was Vietnam.
Vietnam, where it first had like live reports from the front, and let's check in with them. How are they doing? And yeah,
and they don't do that anymore almost.
Oh yeah, no. God, I think ethics got a better hold of them. Plus, I think wars are fought way different than they used to. In some cases, no, well, maybe not. Yeah, if you look at Russia or Ukraine, you kind of get.
How dare you all? The United States hasn't been in the war since Vietnam.
Sure, James. Josh, sorry. Josh.
No, but actually, fun fact, because it used to be like you had to get Congress's vote to go to war. The United States hasn't officially gone to war since Vietnam.
Are they calling it?
They call it different things because they figured out a loophole. But yeah, it's like if you look it up, it's like last time the United States went to war, it's like Vietnam or Korean War even.
A lot of the time they call them operations or excursions.
Field trip.
It's a shame, though, that after this film, he decided to delve into horror and we got Hollow Man out of it, which also was in development limbo for a little while and also had its budget cut because that film is not well remembered either.
Yeah, because
didn't the Robot Cop sequel do the same thing after the first movie? The budget get cut and cut.
Unfortunately, back then it was pretty commonplace. It was the beginning of Hollywood being unwilling to take risks. That's why in this day and age, we see so many adaptations, reboots, remakes, and revivals. They don't want to take risks with the bottom line.
But Steven, we might get more risks because we might get, AI scripts, and they're even talking about having AI do editing.
And that's why the writers are currently on strike.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, after Hollywood, there wasn't much else. But just going through his like filmography, there's some. Yeah, he seems to be the director of the 80s and 90s, and then after that, not much else. He also did Showgirls. So RoboCop, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, Showgirls, Starship Troopers, Hollow Man, and then movies I've never heard about. Black Tricked L, Vendetta. I don't know.
Also, yeah, okay, if he was the director of RoboCop, I can safely say 100% this is satire. Because, okay, tangent. Did you all see the remake to RoboCop?
Yes.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, Dorsey, literally do not watch that movie. Like, you have better things to do with your day.
Didn't know it existed.
Twiddling your thumbs. Because the problem with that one was they got rid of all the, commentary and satire parts of that film, and they just made it like a straight up action. You're like, wow, this is terrible.
That's why this director turned it down. He wanted to modernize the messages, and they wouldn't allow it. They thought that the people funding it thought the original movie was far too violent and far too political. So, yeah, that's why we got the less than stellar movie we got.
As a creator, I can understand wanting to be apolitical because it's like you want to make money, you want as a wide as net as possible. But there is some stuff where it's you got it works better. It's you can't tiptoe around this because even the last movie, Fear and Loathing, that made some clear commentary about drug usage and the United States view on things. this one is a very anti-war kind of film, even though it seems like it's guys in a pro-war. So it's always interesting.
Art has always been like political commentary, right? Most art, whether those are writings, poems, books, movies, pictures, like drawings, everything, like it's most of it political commentary. And yeah, the recent development of social media is that there's so much backlash immediately, that stuff isn't being consumed the way it's intended to be consumed, like with some thought and some like discussion, that you have millions of people just jumping to conclusion without having a proper discussion about things, where I feel like even in the 80s and 90s still, prior to that probably to some extent between certain elitarian groups, not everyone was involved in a discussion, but you could have a discussion about content. Nowadays it feels like, and I don't know if that's social media or just the nature of communication in general via text messages. When I grew up, SMS was only limited to 160, and then Twitter started with 160 characters. It's like you had to do one sentence quick shots. And I think that's where society has gone, that you can't discuss things properly anymore.
Because not only can you not discuss things, you can't have differing views without being seen as an a-hole. And
I disagree with you.
One of the things I like about life is how different people are and how you can have different perspectives. You can take something as small as a movie like this, show it to 10 people, and they could all have different ideas around it. They could also have similarities, but those differences don't have to stand as something that tears the entire group apart. You can just learn from one another. We've just been so force-fed and almost brainwashed by the different news outlets out there and by the way social media is working right now with the anonymity, that you can't have any form of difference of opinion, or like I said, you're an a-hole and you may as well just go to hell, instead of sitting down and just having that polite discussion. Oh, maybe Denise Richards should have showed her tatas off instead of Dina Meyer. Maybe that would have made her character more likable. No, I disagree. She was always going to be a stuck-up bitch no matter what you did.
Yeah, that's the conversation.
Like
that. And I agree with Steven, because the other problem is, like, with social media, people figured out like hate views equals more money than enjoy, like if you like something. But I think the other thing is, so this is going to be a little weird, and I'm sorry if you're younger, it's just this is how it is. So like when cable first started, because that started like in the late 80s, early 90s, they needed to fill the gap with X amount of stuff because they had 24 hours all of a sudden. It was way before my time. TV used to end at like 11 at night and then pick back up at 6 a.m. So all of a sudden they're like, we need to fill this time, throw in like I Love Lucy, shows from the 50s, 60s, 70s. So if you're like a millennial or older, you grew up with older IP. And I think the problem we're getting into nowadays, because if like you look at like, okay, everyone's like, oh, you can't make Blazing Saddles nowadays. That's because if you took Blazing Saddles on the surface detail, you're like, yeah, it's a bunch of racist jokes. Like, this doesn't age well. But if you look a little bit deeper, they actually were talking about how Hollywood whitewashed a lot of the West, especially because like the end, it's them in a Hollywood scene. So it's like, yeah, if you don't understand the context of the history, some of the stuff doesn't work as well. So the same thing like with this kind of movie, it's easy to go like, this is very pro-fascism. It's like, well, let's look at the director's other work. Let's look at what he's like, you know, what's going on in the world. Especially with him, it's like growing up, yeah, your family's grew up with Vietnam and all that, but then it's like he probably grew up, you know, he lived through Desert Storm. Like there's a bunch of conflicts that he's been around.
Yeah, and with this, you get to see the whitewashing because, again, most of the main characters at the start of the film are from Buenos Aires. You don't see a lot of blonde, blue-eyed white people in Buenos Aires.
Not only that, even if you assume the world globalized, and again, using the novel, none of them, like, they weren't white, right? But again,
no, he was definitely Filipino in the novel.
Filipino. In 97, you could not put a Filipino in the main role. That's also a product of its time. If that movie was made nowadays, maybe. But back then, no studio would approve. Like they couldn't have. Like there would be someone who would have, like that movie would have not been made. And in order to get it made, they had to put those actors in. Like again, I think that's also a product of that time. Whether it's right or wrong, obviously, like yeah, we can have a discussion if it's right or wrong. I have my opinions, but if you want to make a movie or wanted to make a movie at this time, you had no other choice. And that's not necessarily the director's choice, right? It's not the director saying, "I was like, I want to make all the characters white." It's like, or the lead ones, the ones that go in the poster.
No, you wanted someone that you could market and that you could have appear on the cover of Teen Beat to entice the younger audiences or whatever the heck they published back then.
Yeah, but again, those decisions
were in this day and age, you'd probably have, I don't know, you'd probably have Pedro Pascal in one of the commanding roles, maybe some unknown in the role of Rico. But yeah, and it was very, very much white Hollywood.
Well, I feel like the other thing, and it's a subtle thing I talked about with the tits, but in some ways, like having them be older and pretending to be teenagers definitely made it feel a little bit more propaganda. Like it doesn't feel as authentic. So you're like, is this is this a movie or was this a propaganda film made in this universe that I'm watching?
Yeah, that's true too. Like if you see it as a propaganda film, which I'm more and more convinced of, that's what the intention was, a little bit satire, but like also in the style of propaganda movies, which are a little bit funny if you look at them, like if you look beyond the curtain and assume that the movie was exactly made how it was intended to be made, because everything else is just like putting your own interpretation and perception into it, then yeah, it is exactly like that. I'm just looking up movies because everyone, like we part of the movie club, we discussed the Oscar movies, and it's like how great it also is that Everything Everywhere All at Once won because it promotes a more diverse cast. But I remember I'm just looking up which year it was made. Letters from Iwo Jima, that was a big movie, director Clint Eastwood. That doesn't have any white character leads.
Such a good movie.
And I'm just looking at, I mean, it was also a part of a movie concept because he made those Flags of Our Fathers, Letters from Iwo Jima. They went hand in hand, but it's still a standalone movie with no white cast. That's from 2006, so that's 9 years after this movie. You could have pulled it off, but then again, Clint Eastwood is also a little bit bigger name that has more push and can make such a movie. But yeah, I don't know of any other movies that at this time or prior to like just 5 to 10 years ago that had like no white cast.
Yeah, I understand progress takes time, change takes time. I don't have to like it, but we can look at it as society slowly but surely moving forward as we see more and more diverse casts take the scene.
Also, I'm going to throw this out there because I am a white male, but I have a lot of black friends. Like they love watching like zombie films because they love watching like white people getting eaten. And it's like, you're looking at this the wrong way. No, like how many white people got killed by bugs compared to like, other minorities? Like, they were fine. It was white people dying.
It was some white people, yes, it was some white people, but that's because the majority of the cast was white. If they had a more diverse cast, then it would end up being like many of the horror movies were back in the day, and probably the black cast member would have been the first to die.
I won't lie, because I feel like The Boys is going to be wrapping up soon from Amazon. You were talking about like this might be a show made for Amazon. if that same team worked on this, I think that would be that would be best case scenario.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, Kripke has plans up through 5 concretely, but does have ideas for further spin-offs and maybe a 6th season. But just like with Supernatural, he prefers to do 5-season runs. He thinks any more than 5 seasons and you step too far away from the core.
Of The Boys?
For The Boys, but also his original intention for Supernatural was for it to run 5 seasons, and then it wound up running far too long at 15 seasons.
Yeah.
Because the weird thing is, too, especially like with Supernatural, because it's like, how many times has the apocalypse happened? Like, there's certain threats where it's like, because let's be honest, Lord of the Rings is a very classic novel and a great film set, but it's kind of like when they made The Hobbit feel like Lord of the Rings, eventually it's like, how many times is this ring going to cause this problem? Like, yeah, we've been here, we've tread this ground.
Money doesn't, like, if you're strong enough, your will is strong enough to resist the money, and you have the art in mind. It still takes a lot of conviction, I guess, to stop when you wanted to stop instead of continuing. There's like example, like the End of the Fucking World, that had to end after 2 seasons, potentially after the first, but I think they pulled off a great second season. But then they wanted someone wanted to continue. So you can't continue this. Like, you got to end this. You can't. If you continue it now, it's gonna get worse. You have Jason Sudeikis, who says Ted Lasso's done after this season, and the way this is going, it probably is the right choice too. Perhaps, maybe not. But like, if you have the will and the power to say, no, this is what I envisioned. This is what I'm going to deliver. I'm not going to continue just for money's sake. I think then you got to give them some props too, to like acknowledge that, yeah, they are the artists and they choose when to stop.
I also think is the greatest TV show that, like, if anyone here has watched it, my respect for you would double like by 1,000%. But Primal, because
I watched season 1.
Love it.
Have you seen both seasons?
Yes.
No.
Big fan of Unicorn so far too.
So far, Steven is the best one out of MNC, and I'm even including Omar, because Omar hasn't watched that. Yeah. But
SOB.
Yes.
Oh, good.
But like, slight spoiler, but like, they're making a season 3 of Primal, but it doesn't feature Spear and Fang anymore. It's like, their story's done. We're moving on to, like, it will be the same feeling, but new cast. So it's like, I almost wish we're kind of getting the weeds, but who cares? American Horror Story. I had so much hope for that, and I feel like they bombed. Like, they didn't bomb, but they dropped the ball, so we couldn't get more.
They talk bad about it, and they don't want to do that.
Josh.
No, someone cut off Josh's internet because he's drifting.
But I get what he's saying. And I get what you're saying too as well. If you have won, and I think this film is a winner, why bother continuing unless you can hold true to the message and the story that you've already set up?
Yeah, plus there are lots of livelihoods attached to it too, right? It's not only not only the director, the main characters. Why kill it if it's successful? There's like pros and cons. Why kill it if it's successful? If you choose not to watch it, don't watch it. There are many people that stopped watching Star Wars or counted as canon after Disney took over, which you can have arguments pro and against, and everyone's choice to go either way. But just don't try to impose your own opinion on others. Just pick what you like, and then, yeah, if you don't enjoy it after a certain season, stop watching after that season.
I'm perfectly fine with things continuing with certain properties, but I would like to see things end and then begin in a different direction. A great example would be the most recent Dungeons and Dragons film.
I haven't seen that one yet.
that as its own thing and respect the culture of Dungeons and Dragons. If they make a sequel, move on to a different cast of characters as if you're beginning a new campaign. You don't have to bring back the same story and the same cast for everything. You can do that here with Starship Troopers. You can continue to bring back Casper as you want, but don't make his character the focus. See the war evolve and see the strategies evolve, see the political climate change. That's obviously they're just sending people to their doom. Just do something different with it instead of regurgitating the same thing.
You could create a whole universe around it, right? Like Star Wars did, like just different stories in the same universe. Don't attach those to the characters. Sorry,
right. Just don't set it on Tatooine every season.
Yeah.
I was going to say with Starship Troopers also, let's see some new bugs. Like, let's see some cool ideas there. Because I feel like we're kind of, it's a golden age for like television, but in some ways we're in a slump because they keep like regurgitating the same stuff over and over again. And it's like, it would be fun to see. I would not mind like a reboot or a new Starship Troopers, but especially it's like, I don't want to see, the kids like, yeah, give me a different part of this world.
Let's show me how the bugs are strategizing and how they actually hurl asteroids at Earth. Like how
Oh,
about
why
technology. How do you
why do we want that planet for?
Okay, Torsten, I will tell you how they launch these asteroids, since that is your hang up here. You have the big bugs with the butt cannons. You hit a rock enough times, it will go in the direction you want.
You know why this is my hang up, right? Because there's a great conspiracy theory that mankind did that to themselves. They're hauling the asteroids at themselves and they're blaming the bugs, or the asteroids are just in their path. Like they're not being fired by anyone. They're just traveling through space, and one is on a path to collide with Earth, and humans just have to find a scapegoat and pick the bugs. So
yes, that's exactly how I have seen that asteroid plot. Thank you. And
that's why it's my hang up, because like there's so much
another
more
planet to be mined for resources, because humankind has basically gutted Earth. So it's Avatar, but in the Starship Troopers universe. And instead of unobtainium or whatever the hell that mineral was,
that is the dumbest place.
Something else in the Starship Troopers universe. Maybe the bugs can be mined because the world's oxygen is running out. So
you don't even have to mine them. You just have to have a purpose. The also part of fascism is like you have to have a common enemy. You have to unite against. That's how you finance the military. That's how you get everyone behind your efforts. How you get reelected, and all of that. You don't even need to mine or want anything from them. You just have to have a common enemy so people don't turn on themselves.
You know what? I might be the single one here. Now that I think about it, I kind of like how it wasn't like, because they wrapped in the guise of survival, but it's like you could say it was like colonialism, like them spreading out, like wanting territory. But it's like the unobtainium, like it was humans versus the bugs. And yeah, it's like it's pro-fascism, but it's not like there's because in some ways it would have been easy to have like Neil Patrick Harrison's character to come out of nowhere and be like, yes, we need this mineral. And it's like, in some ways it's better because they're like, no, it's just not like, we don't know why this war, because it's like, we're not high enough in the food chain to know why this war is going on because we're a grunt.
Right.
Yeah, they're blaming the bugs for not being smart, but actually they're the soldiers following orders without thinking. If you take that perspective.
The other theory I had surrounding the purpose of this war is that Earth is running out of resources and they needed some kind of enemy to send people off to war to fight, to diminish the population so Earth could still sustain life.
So not getting resources, but getting rid of people.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was another reason behind you can't reproduce without having served in the military, because they speculated, well, you're going to die anyway. you're not the kind of people we want reproducing. So screw it. You go off to war. If you come back, you reproduce. Maybe. If not, then hey, the population problem is still being taken care of.
See, I kind of saw it the opposite way. I felt like humanity, there we go. Humanity solved all of its problems because it's like, it seems like, you know, they have interstellar travel, like, even like, you never saw like anyone really poor. Granted, it's the way the film was at, but it's like all the problems are solved. So it's like, what do we do with no problem? It's like, I don't know, let's go pick a fight with these guys so we have a war.
There's this, I forgot what the movie is called, but where it's basically also comedy about this president who wants to get reelected and he makes up this fake war. Whack the dog. I think that's it. Yeah. Where it's like, well, in order to get reelected, I have to make up a war because every president so far who's been in a war gets reelected. And I think Josh lost his internet again.
Yep.
But yeah, as we're waiting for him to come back, what, any last to conclude the discussion about Starship Troopers? Any last thoughts about the movie? Before we stop the recording, we can keep chatting. But
like I said, I haven't seen it for years. I kept my weight up.
When this movie came out, it was going against Titanic and Alien 3.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Also,
so it didn't have a way into any theater. They were all blocked.
Also, I feel like this one's aged better than Alien 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we had gotten the original concept for Alien 3, that would be a different story. But yeah, the Alien 3 we got, this holds up much better.
Well, this goes into a whole nother thing, but like you're saying, I would not mind like more Alien, but it's like I don't know if I want more Ripley's story in Alien because it's like,
what, you know, the new movie coming out is going to be based on something new.
Yeah, and we're still getting a television series set in that universe as well. We've got a sequel to Ripley's series of movies. We've got another sequel after Covenant for some reason, and we've got a television series. But final thoughts on this. I still, after all these years, love it. It's in my top 10 movies for sci-fi. And I just wish Criterion would release something for it because I would love to see this remastered completely in pure 4K. I'd love to see what had to be cut out because the budget got slashed in half. And if they decide to continue it in a television series, I'd be up for it. But like I said, I don't want the same crap regurgitated. And oh yeah, Carmen sucks. Worst character in the movie. My biggest disappointment is that she lived just due to plot armor.
Yeah, and they threw her boyfriend into a milkshake.
Yeah. Well, he was a douche anyway.
I enjoyed watching it again just recently more than I enjoyed watching it initially with the perspective. I enjoyed talking about it even more than watching it again. So I might enjoy it more to rewatch it now with the additional insight from you guys to rewatch it again with our discussion in mind. So thank you all for talking about Starship Troopers.
Our pleasure. Anyone who hasn't watched it, watch this movie if you would like to know more.
It's a hidden gem.
Also, what was the name of that channel, James? I should have looked this up. Mentees, because they did a top 10 like things you didn't know about Starship Troopers.
I think I posted to see.
Anyway, if you're in the Discord, look that up. But that's a good channel that gives you like not really spoilers, just like behind
Minty Comic Arts.
Yeah,
that's one. Yep, he's an Aussie. But anyway, yeah, because my final thought, I just wish we'd get more sci-fi that wasn't like Star Wars or Star Trek. So yeah, I would love to see more of this.
Different universe. All right. Thank you all. Take care.